never imagined that a flickering porch light could turn into the most unexpected evening of my life. The afternoon had settled into that golden, honeyed light that only comes in late October, slanting through the kitchen window and painting the countertop in slow, warm stripes. The scent of cinnamon tea curled from my mug, and the old floorboards creaked underfoot as I moved between rooms, checking the fuse box for the third time that week. I never imagined that something so ordinary could become the thing that changed everything. I am 72, widowed now for 7 years, and I have grown accustomed to the quiet rhythm of my days. Each morning begins with the same measured steps, boiling water, steeping the tea, opening the curtains to the same view of the oak tree in the neighbor's yard. My late husband's slippers still sit by the door, though I haven't worn them in years. The house is full of small rituals, the kind that keep loneliness at bay without ever naming it. But that evening, the porch light refused to behave, blinking on and off like a stubborn heartbeat. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer, so I reached for the phone and dialed the number I'd saved months ago, just in case. He arrived just as the light began to fade, his boots clicking softly on the walkway before he knocked twice, a steady rhythm that felt almost rehearsed. I opened the door to find a man in his late 50s, broad-shouldered, but with hands that moved with surprising gentleness. He carried a worn leather toolkit, the kind that had seen decades of use, and his voice was low and steady, the kind that made you trust him before you even spoke. "Evening," he said, stepping inside without ceremony, and I caught the faintest scent of cedar and motor oil clinging to his jacket. He didn't rush, didn't act like this was an imposition, and when he asked where the problem was, I pointed to the porch without thinking twice. Something about the way he carried himself made me feel safe, as if he had already decided to stay until the job was done. He knelt on the porch, his tools spread out in careful order, and I hovered in the doorway, watching the way the last of the daylight caught the silver in his hair. The air smelled of damp earth and wood shavings as he worked, and I found myself stepping closer than I meant to, drawn by the quiet concentration on his face. I busied myself with the kettle, filling it with water, and when he glanced up, I offered tea without thinking. He accepted with a nod, and for the first time in years, I felt the strange comfort of having someone else in the house, someone whose presence didn't feel like an intrusion. He didn't notice when I moved a little closer, or if he did, he said nothing. The room felt smaller with him in it, but not in a way that made me want to leave. The light finally steadied, and he straightened with a satisfied sigh, wiping his hands on a rag he pulled from his pocket. I set 2 mugs on the small table by the window, the steam rising between us, and when he took his first sip, he exhaled slowly, as if the warmth had traveled all the way to his bones. "You've kept this place lovely," he said, glancing around at the framed photographs on the sideboard, the ones of my husband, of our children when they were young. I didn't answer right away, but the words hung between us, soft and unexpected. Then, quietly, he asked, "How long has it been since you had help with things like this?" The question wasn't just about the porch light. It was about the years, the quiet accumulation of small tasks that had become mine alone. I told him 7 years, and when I did, I realized I hadn't said the words aloud in a long time. The rain started just as he finished tightening the last screw, a slow, steady drumming on the roof that made the house feel even more sheltered. He looked up at the sound, then back at me, and without a word, I found myself saying, "You should stay for dinner. It's no trouble." He hesitated only a moment before nodding, and I realized with a quiet thrill that I hadn't wanted him to leave. We moved to the kitchen, where the scent of simmering soup filled the air, and he pulled out a chair without being asked. Time stretched and folded in on itself, longer than it should have been, shorter than it felt. We talked about the neighborhood, about the way the oak tree's leaves had turned early this year, about his grown son who lived 2 hours away. But beneath the small talk, there was something else, a current of recognition that neither of us named. He told me about his wife, how she had passed 3 years ago, how the house had felt too quiet after she was gone. I listened as he spoke, my hands stilling over the bowl of salad I was tossing, and when he mentioned how he still set the table for 2 on Sundays, just in case, I felt my throat tighten. I told him about my husband, not the love stories or the grand gestures, but the quiet things, the way he used to hum while he shaved, how he always left his slippers by the door even when he wasn't wearing them. We didn't offer pity or empty comfort. We simply recognized the shape of each other's loneliness, the way it had settled into our bones without either of us noticing until now. The air between us was thick with unspoken understanding, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone in the room. When the dishes were cleared and the rain had softened to a whisper against the windows, he reached across the table and brushed his fingers over mine, just for a second, as if testing the weight of the moment. I didn't pull away. I didn't question it. His touch was warm and deliberate, not demanding, not hurried, and when he finally stood to leave, I walked him to the door without a word. The porch light burned steady and bright behind us, casting long shadows on the floorboards. He turned to me at the threshold, his eyes holding mine for a heartbeat longer than necessary, and I knew, without him saying it, that he understood something about me that I hadn't even realized myself. He stepped out into the damp evening, his boots crunching softly on the wet pavement, and I watched until he disappeared around the corner. The house felt different when he was gone. Not emptier, exactly, but more alive in a way I couldn't quite name. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, the repaired porch light glowing through the window, and I understood, with a quiet certainty, that something in me had been mended too. The light hadn't just been fixed tonight. Neither had I. It is never too late to feel seen. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and write in the comments which city you are listening from. It means a great deal to us.